All right, Andre. So, question for you. Do companies need a new subconscious mindset? And if so, how can it be done?
Absolutely. And this is a great subject that we need to talk about, you and I. Listen, the key here is, and people don't know this, but Steve Jobs, right? The man that created the biggest company, most valuable company in the world, as of second valuable, most valuable company in the world, as of December. He's a man that experimented with alternate ways of understanding the conscious unconscious. He went to India, he went in ashram for a few months, experimenting with meditation. He also, believe it or not, did LSD. So he is someone that was very fascinated by this realm. And in fact, one of his 10, there's a list out there floating in the internet about Steve Jobs' 10 top reads. This is one of them. Okay.
Huh.
It's the autobiography of a yogi. This is the yogi that basically made yoga famous in the United States.
Uh-huh.
And this is one of his books. So it's obvious to me, right, that if Steve Jobs, the man that's created the most, really in many ways, the most powerful company in the world, in terms of brand and everything else, invented the iPhone. If he explored this dimension, which he took into his company, why shouldn't others do the same?
It's interesting that you say that. Okay, so I also see the trend out there that we're experiencing with LSD and with psychedelics to raise your level of consciousness. I mean, things like that have been out there for a long time, but you see it more also on the celebrity, on certain people out there like absolutely experiencing that to get to the next level. So it's interesting that you look at that from a corporate point of view, and I also have some connection with that. So, and you wrote an article about that, right? So what is it about?
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Companies are made of people, you and I, right?
Yeah.
And if people bring in their subconscious and their consciousness to work, it has an impact, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just humans being humans. Is it being humans by themselves, or is it humans being part of a team, of a company, right? So what brought this to me is 30 years experience and 15 years working in innovation ecosystems and trying to study ecosystems and understand ecosystems. And this is where you and I met. When I was at Deutsche Telekom, we launched this Fortune 60 company. We launched this innovation ecosystem, and we studied and we managed it, and we used design thinking, all these things. And in doing all this, I've realized this a lot of the, if you think of a company as a learning ecosystem, right, impacted by different humans bringing in their own abstract thoughts, some consciousness, and what do you call it, and blocks, mental blocks. I thought the work you're doing on a personal level, why not move it to the corporate level? Absolutely, right? I mean, corporates are made of people, and why not use some of these techniques, old techniques and new techniques, to kind of free up companies, so they understand, first of all, this subconscious conscious divide,
Hmm.
90-10, or I think you say 95,
Yeah.
5.
Depends.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at, and I think I wrote the piece because I wanted to put that in people's minds.
Hmm. So how did you come about this? I mean, you had experienced that in your own corporate life, whereas I left the corporate world a few years ago and I moved more into the personal space with regard to especially energy, psychology, and exploring the subconscious mind and the power it has over our life. As you said, over 95% of what we think, feel, and do is coming from that underlying programming, which is amazing. It's eye-opening actually when you realize that only 5% of your day-to-day thoughts and activities are coming from willpower, and the rest is an automatic programming that's just running without us realizing it most of the time, right? And
Exactly.
now we translate that to the corporate world. What does that mean for a company which is full of individuals? And I always imagine, when I imagine a company now, I see the leadership and all the people in the company, and they're all walking around with their little backpack full of programs from their past, pretty much. Yeah, and the
Exactly.
sum of these backpacks makes what this company is, pretty much. And there's so much potential to dig into. Okay, what do you have in your backpack? Ah, there's this limiting belief here. You feel you're not good enough, right, or whatever, and you take that out and you change that and put it back in, or whatever, right? So what? So how do you? These are
Oh
like
my
so
God.
interesting concepts. It's
Ah,
mind-blowing what you can do on a corporate level.
there's so much to be done. So much to be done. We could probably spend weeks talking about this, but a couple of things. So corporates now are talking. Everybody's starting to realize that the individual mindset has such a huge impact on the performance of a team or on
Yeah,
the company. Period. Right. So if you have somebody, if you have, I've been lucky to work in different cultures. I worked with German cultures, I worked with Latin American cultures, I worked with Chinese cultures, right?
yeah,
And each one has a very subtle, different ways of thinking, but also they all have their own kind of blocks, mental blocks, right? So, and when you bring those mental blocks in via your unconscious bias, right? Your unconscious biases, so you don't even know they're playing in the background, right?
yeah,
When you make assumptions about someone, right? And you're saying, oh, that person cannot, not saying explicitly, subconsciously, you're thinking, oh, this person cannot be creative. This person is just a financial manager. What is he or she going to know about how to create the next product, right? These are things that are happening in companies right now, right?
mhm,
When you liberate the creativity in a company, for example, by teaching design thinking, which basically design thinking says, we're all creative people and we got all have the power to come up with the next solution.
yeah,
Not just the CEO, not the CMO, but how about your service person that is attending an account? I mean, in my experience, one of the greatest discovery a long time ago was this service manager that used to service our accounts. He goes, we should do this differently. And I think we do this differently. We're going to get more business. And it led to all kinds of massive business, right? So uh, so yeah, there's a way. So executives, we can start with executives, learning, understanding basically the humanness of themselves, right?
mhm,
And then start maybe doing this at scale where you start educating people about these things at a greater level. But the other thought was in the piece that I wrote and that I tried to put to frame for everybody is that companies in a way are a lot of companies delivering the value chain are running on the 95%, right?
mhm,
So a lot of things are being done in the 90%. You set up your supply chain, you repeat, 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 repeat. But if you want to innovate, if you really want to step out, you gotta work on that 10%. And
mhm.
for that, you need to, perhaps my suggestion is to adopt some of these things. There's all new things out there like EMDR and Psyche that help a human step out of their mental blocks and develop their 10% better. So that's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, and I agree. There's a lot of work I think that can be done on the human level in the corporate world, especially yeah, innovation. We have both been embedded in innovation research and activities all over the world, Silicon Valley and internationally for many years, for decades actually. And I agree, the focus was mostly on the innovation part of the products or the services, but not really, and maybe organizational structures. How can we restructure our organization so we can deliver better our we can deliver our service better to the market, but it was never really down to the individual level as okay, what are you struggling with, like where are your shortcomings subconsciously that affect the team you're working in, the department, and our organization as such. There are so many angles that you can take on this, even starting from the corporate purpose, purpose, vision, mission, values. probably, you know.
Exactly.
That's an interesting angle too, where you can just reflect, okay, this is what you came up with your 5% or 10% mind. It's a beautiful sentence. It's plastered all over the building in the elevators, but do you actually deeply believe that subconsciously? Is that in congruence with your subconscious beliefs? And the powerful way is that what you just said, it can be actually tested. These things can be tested and see if is there congruence with what you consciously want and what subconsciously is programmed inside of you. And
Absolutely.
they're really applicable ways. And I see that the marriage of energy psychology and design thinking is so powerful.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's the only way. I mean, if you look at the companies that are, oh God, there's a lot of research on this, but there's, there has to be full alignment, right? And like you said, vision, mission, then company purpose, and all these things, and all these things need to be completely aligned. But
Yeah,
even then, though, companies are still companies, organizations are still seeing this from a very transactional view, right? You gotta insert the 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 human dynamic, the subconscious dynamic, like you said. Is this in alignment, right? Is this alignment with what the founders said? Is it let's go back to Steve Jobs.
yeah,
It's the simplicity of design that he talked about so much. Is that still part of the culture? Until what is it, 30 years now that Apple was created?
yeah,
I just bought a laptop, right? And I looked at the box that it came in. This is the same all white box, very simple design, right? Make companies appeal to the desire of the person buying the product. Right? What's the
yeah,
design? So all these things you really have to really kind of be alignment. People have to be in a line, and the company has to be aligned. So
mm,
simple concepts, and taking people through some of these workshops. I think, I mean, I've taken people, and you have as well, we've taken people through this design thinking workshops and
yeah,
some of these other, and it's phenomenal what happens, but to people's mindsets. But you have to maintain it, right?
yeah.
It has to be maintained. It has to be, you can't just go in, walk away and say, oh yeah, here, you're done. No, it needs to be a process. It's a process. But yeah.
Yeah. I compared a little bit to like a therapy approach. If you go to a therapist, and I don't want to downplay therapy, talk therapy, but I've had a lot of conversations with people who said, okay, it got me to a certain point, but then I felt I was missing a change inside of me. We were always talking about everything that happened, but I was missing the sort of the reconfiguration inside of me that I felt different about it. And I think that is exactly what is needed in the corporate organizational context. I just remember we had many years ago in my previous career, we had this 3 days workshop, Myers-Briggs personality workshop with the entire team, came up with beautiful individual content and categorization of who we are as a team and as an individual. And then the trainers walked away 2 days later. We really didn't implement anything. We got some learning out of it, but it was not embedded internally in ourselves. And I
Right.
felt there was such an opportunity to really change something fundamentally, but we didn't, and I think we missed a significant chance to do a much more dramatic change on the individual level, and that can be done. And that's, as you said, design thinking is out there, energy psychology with all these amazing methodologies, EMDR, Psyche, which is what I'm doing with my clients, and just utilizing whole brain state, muscle testing as the interface between your body and your mind. And it's applicable, it's pragmatic, and I have background as I'm an engineer by trade, and I love pragmatic approaches. And for me, that was just one light bulb after the other went up when I came across these new techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, and it's it, and some of these techniques are are very, to your point, they're very practical and very fast acting. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done a couple of these things and they're amazing, right? So two things. So one, there's a very practical side of these things, right? EMDR and Psych-K and all these things. You know, they're, I wouldn't call them quick hits, but it's something that in our culture, in our Western culture, you know, we want results quickly.
Yeah.
It's something that does show results quickly. But the other one is what I call companies needs to think in a different way. They need to think about, hey, listen, our employees are creative souls. We need to develop platforms of mind, what I call platforms of mind,
Beautiful.
to kind of facilitate their creativity, to expand their creativity, and use these techniques. You know, meditation is another one, and all these things, right? Uh, so very, so these things are effective,
Yeah.
and, but it has the mother, like they say, the mother of learning is repetition. You can't just do it once or twice. You have to have a platform so people can use it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that will shift mindsets in a way that companies have no idea. At this point, I think they're underestimating. I mean, you know, the pandemic has really kind of forced everybody to rethink things. Everything from we're rethinking capitalism, right, to, you know, how do we work with people across computers?
Yeah.
So now more than ever, we got to start thinking about these things. You know.
You bring up a good point, the repetition part and mindfulness. Okay, in order to change, I always say it, in order to change, you have to become aware first of what
Right.
it is that you want to change, of what is not working, what do you want to have instead. So awareness comes before change. The whole mindfulness piece is a training, right? It's like a muscle training, mindfulness training with meditation, breathing, whatsoever, to really come to your inner self more. Um, I want to highlight one thing that you said, the repetition part, as far as changing your subconscious beliefs does not require essentially a lot of repetition, because we are all energetic beings, right? And our thoughts, our emotions, our brain impulses, all electricity. And I always like to explain, what do you mean with changing your subconscious belief? Let's say there is a belief, I'm not good enough. Well, it's like this Word document that's stored in your computer of the subconscious mind that says, I am not good enough. What do we do with these techniques? We open up this Word document and we change the wording, yeah, to I am powerful, and I do the best I can, and that's good enough.
Mhm.
And then we save that and we put it back into your system. That's pretty much what it is. And it's in a matter of 15 minutes, you can change these fundamental limiting beliefs. And now imagine you do that on an organizational level, starting with the leadership, because we are all humans, yeah, no matter what title we have, right?
Exactly.
From the top level all the way down to the service level, administrative level, it does not matter. And I think huge, huge potential, huge potential.
Huge, huge. I mean, I've seen the things that have come across in my, you know, you and I, like you said, we worked on innovation and try to, you know, product development and all these things. And I absolutely fell in love with this innovation ecosystem to stimulate people to solve problems, right? Everybody. But in doing all that, you're always going to encounter people that are, you know, cultural issues that hold people back, right?
Mhm.
And I have so many examples of, and one thing that you and I think, and people that are in this realm, what we're doing is that you develop a different sense of people's energies. You know,
Yeah,
once you study the stuff deep enough, right? You start going deep into the human psyche and all this stuff. You start developing an ability to kind of feel people's energy in a way that a lot of people don't, right?
yeah,
And I've walked into meetings, for example, where, you know, you walk in and then you have like the boss come in and the energy just dissipates, because you can see this person um, having some difficulties or whatever, and it just kills the mojo, right, in the whole room. What happens if you could address that person's subconscious mindset when they came in, and it would turn the energy completely around, right? It would be, oh yeah, we're here, we're going to innovate, I respect all of you, let's do this, no titles here, that kind of attitude. So
Yes.
there's a lot that can be done. I agree, tons. Yeah.
Yes, and to your point, it starts with the leadership. You can, of course, start somewhere in the organization just to prototype it. And I had various conversations with colleagues and about how do you approach it. But I think if leadership starts and really opens up, and that's again, you have to be open for this type of thing. You have to see the need, and you have to have the desire. I want to do something fundamentally different, right? That
Yeah.
has to come first. Without that, there is no change. There's no readiness or willingness or openness for these new thought
Exactly.
concepts, for these techniques, and there's no point, right? But
Exactly.
if there is, oh my God, there's so much. But as you said, if the sea level, one person starts digging into their inner psyche and changing things, and it doesn't have to be dramatically, just
No, it doesn't.
their energy changes, the way they talk changes, and people pick that up. To your point, we all have these, of course, we have our main five senses, but we all have that gut feeling. We have so many other senses where we pick up energies from other people, and you will sense that. It's
Exactly. And it is so true what you're saying here. Uh, again, so
it's
sorry, my dog is barking. Okay. Anyways,
it's okay.
it is the pandemic years, so it's okay.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So think about um, how, like in that instance that I mentioned before, right? If you taught someone a mechanism to trigger themselves, right? To say, I'm thinking this thought that is going to carry me over to behave in this manner, right? If you taught that person to recognize those triggers, right, and to stop themselves short, think about what it can happen. Let me give you an example. Once you start getting to know each other, getting to know yourself deeper. So one thing that I do if I get upset, for example, let's say I'm in traffic, somebody cuts me off, right? I use a reframing technique very quickly, and I ask myself this question: is what that person just did, would I have done that myself at some point in time?
Yeah.
Once you ask yourself that question, you're like, oh yeah, I probably would have done that. I probably cut somebody off 20 years ago. Immediately it calms you down, right? So things like that, and really getting deeper into the human side of things, which I think companies need.
Yes, and you hitting on two important points. You can consciously reframe any situation, right?
Back-
Because your thoughts are pretty much a product of your perception, right? Of how you perceive something. So you perceive an event as aggressive, and I may perceive it, the same event, as totally neutral, right? So it's our perception, our filter. So we can change that filter, that perception, by becoming aware of, oh, that's actually not how I want to feel. I don't want it to trigger me. And then you change the viewpoint, as you just explained. So you can consciously do that, and then it immediately changes your energy. But sometimes there is some underlying programming that
back-
just automatically generates these reactions, and you have like no control over them. And that's what I'm referring to. So there is this conscious reframing that you can do, and that you can actually train people to, in every situation, take other viewpoints and see what changes consciously. But then at one point we also need to dig deep, because we have a sea, an ocean of beliefs buried in our subconscious, and a lot of them are dysfunctional, limiting, sabotaging, and that's what we need to tackle in order also to help the individual contributor to liberate themselves from that and flourish, not just in their professional life, but also personally, because we are not two different persons. We are not, oh, there's this professional with our title, right? And then we are this at-home father, mother, cousin, whatsoever, right? Um, we are one person. We are one human. And what we do in one area of our life affects the other one too.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And if I could quote a great book that I read a while back called "From Good to Great" by
Mm,
Collins, he mentions, and never forget this. He goes, "Is the different levels of leadership, right? And if the top companies, the great companies, have a leader, the fifth level, I think it was, where the executive or the management structure was egoless, right? So when you're egoless, when you're saying, okay, I have, when you're egoless, you're recognizing so many things. You're saying the impact that I have on people is, the impact each one of us can have on the world is so much bigger than we think, right?
yeah,
And if you act negatively, if you suppress people, you're going to get no energy whatsoever. But if you're egoless and you say, I'm going to make sure that all the people that work for me or manage this project have the right tools and are open-minded, and I will be open-minded and accept failure and all these things.
yeah,
Things are just, this is not just us talking about it. This is proof, right? It's proven in research. So,
yeah,
but what I want to do is I want to accelerate this transition into this new leadership.
yes.
We need more people solving more problems faster.
I agree. So let's, in closing, just have some practical, like how could this be approached? Let's say there is an entrepreneur, maybe a small business or a bigger business, and somebody says, okay, this totally resonates with me. How can I get started? How would that be in your case? And I give my
Well, I'll
examples.
tell you what. Why don't you start, because you're more focused on each individual, right? I'm thinking more trying to do these things at scale. But
Yeah,
would you try? How would you do it with an entrepreneur that's starting a company, for example, right?
yeah. Okay, so there's actually this thing that I work on with people, and I have it here. It's the principles of nature, right? You can take any approach. You can look into your purpose. Do you know your purpose? Do you know your vision, your mission on a personal level? And you can really define that consciously and then test it. Test it against your subconscious. Is what you came up with as far as your purpose statement. That's who you are. Does that resonate? Is that in congruence with your subconscious belief, or is there something inside of you that sort of rubs against that? Is there some friction? And if there's some friction, we can change that. And I've just actually completed a journey with a client of mine, 3 months going through this entire process. We did more, but that was part of it. Purpose, vision, mission, values, and then defining their unique skills and essence. And we
Mhm.
can test that against the subconscious configuration, which is unbelievable. It pretty much solidifies what you consciously want, your goals, with what you subconsciously believe. Right? So you could do with that purpose, vision. You could align yourself with the principles of nature. I just give you an example: collaboration. I am inspired by the accomplishments of others. That goal statement,
There
you
you go.
can test it pretty much. Is that really what you subconsciously believe? And if not, let's change that, right? Because
Yeah,
that's what you want. You want to be inspired. You don't want to be envious. You don't want to be
exactly.
jealous. You want to be inspired by the accomplishment of others, right? So there's a whole range of principles that we can test in order to see where are your dysfunctional aspects of your inner program that hold you back in
Tripping
your,
you up. Yeah.
yeah. So that's how I would start on an, and that can be, yeah, on a leadership level. You can, hey, let's have a conversation. Maybe some people see already where they are standing in their own way,
Hmm.
patterns, situations, thought patterns that they don't like, reactions, trigger points. Then you can dig into that. If you don't have that, then there's many different sources that you can use to start peeling the onion. It's an absolutely mind-blowing
It's
approach.
beautiful, man. Yeah. So I would do something very similar at scale. So at scale, one thing we could do is, uh, I'm a big, huge believer in design thinking, right? I mean, I found religion in design thinking because this idea of thinking. So design thinking is about teaching people to think intersectionally, to think at where things come together, right? Humans come together. Everything in life is intersections. So when you come together and you start so you give people that awareness first of all. So first, when you talk about people being aware, so first you're aware, you go, oh, listen, I'm part of a bigger thing, right? So I'm integrated with other systems. That's called design thinking. You're integrating with other designs. You're the human design interacting with the car design or whatever. Second, so you teach people, you do workshops when you teach them this. Then you teach them, when you do workshops, you realize, you ask them to open up their minds and collaborate.
Yeah.
Right? No impact on your career. You do a journey map and you say, you ask this group of people that have never been asked to be creative before, and you say, what would you do here? How would you make the customer experience different here? And when people start doing this, it's like a game, and it's like, oh my God, this is so cool. You're asking me. Oh, and then they realize this is collaboration at the most basic level, right?
Yeah, beautiful.
So you do that, you can do that. And then, so that teaches that. And then also you can do, explain to people what empathy means. I mean, a lot of companies kind of, a lot of these concepts get muddled. What is love? What is, what is empathy? But if you explain to them that these meanings of these words are more, they're more, not on the romantic level, but more on cultural level,
Yeah.
right? So you teach them about empathy, and you teach them that it's within us, and that you can actually exercise the muscle, right?
Yeah.
And just that awareness starts shifting people's minds. Yeah, and do things to scale, right? And then you can move on to other things, meditation to scale, or some of these other things. But yeah.
Yeah. You could start with a workshop probably, right? Just to
Yeah.
educate about the approaches, do a webinar or something. Hey, I want to know more about okay, let's do a webinar. I'm always pragmatic. How can you get started? Well, a workshop is a good point, just to explain the
Workshop's
concepts
a
and
good point. What
approaches.
I find very useful is, because again, humans are fearful, right? Our brains are wired to be fearful, right? The tiger's coming to get us, right? That's in our subconscious.
Yes.
If you show people how things work with that. So one of the things that I do is I do this very quick 4-hour workshop, 3-hour workshops with executives to show them what design thinking is and how it's not intimidating to their power or to their egos in a way. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. This is pretty cool. Yeah, let's do it. So start the process of doing these things, education, repetition, repetitive, doing at the scale that you need. So there's buy-in for everybody, and yeah, and start from the bottom up and the top down. So mid in the middle, meet in the middle.
There you go.
There you go.
Love it. Andres, hey, that was an exciting conversation. So, do companies need a new subconscious mindset? Do we?
Yes,
They do.
absolutely. We just
Right
told them how
on.
to do it.
Huh?
We just told everybody how to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much. This was exciting, and we'll put your contact information in the notes and whatever is needed, and then we
Thank you,
go
man.
from there, okay?
Thank you, sir. It was fun.
All right. Talk to you soon. Yes. Take care.